settled.
Are we warming it?
Oh,
warming it
I
up?
did get settled in.
Oh,
Yeah.
you got to get
Yeah,
settled.
I gotta get
Okay.
all ready for this.
Okay. Well, you're too pretty as it is.
Oh well, I think on that
Uh,
happy note, let's get into it.
Welcome back, everybody, to Embrace the Storm. Jeremy's going to have to do a whole bunch of editing on the beginning of this thing
We'll figure it out.
because I rushed into it. Back with my lovely co-host, Jeremy Weens.
Yeah.
It doesn't look as good as Vanna White, maybe in a skirt.
Well,
Uh,
she's aging.
she's aging, and you're like a fine wine.
Well, but
We are back. Funny enough, our topic tonight is pushing through, perseverance, and attitude. And we had to persevere to even get this podcast out to y'all. Because
we are about an hour and a quarter, hour and a half later than we were actually going to start because of technical difficulties in figuring this out.
Jeremy doesn't know how to charge a GoPro or start a computer. No, I'm kidding.
Well, it
kind
helps
of.
when you actually put the battery in the whole way.
Yeah. So we figured out what our tech problem was. It wasn't just the battery. There's a few things, but we got it. We're here. Our battery is looking mediocre, so we don't know how long we're going to be on this podcast. So we persevered. We
And we
persevered.
did, and now we're here.
Now we're here, and we're excited to be back. And yeah, we're not going to dive into too much on the week, but good week, bad week. How'd you feel about it?
Better than last time. It's going, like I said, I think last time I felt like I was kind of going in a spiral down and I had to do something, right?
Yep.
So took a reset this last weekend,
Nice.
pulled back a little bit this week and said, okay, we're gonna take a breath and reset. Beautiful thing doing that was it didn't mean I slowed down at work. I still was working hard.
Yeah.
I just wasn't pushing things that maybe didn't need to be pushed. I was kind of like, whatever happens.
Yeah.
I kind of going at the week with my hands open, not clutching on, holding on, right?
Would you say that maybe like you trying to force things wasn't working for you, but then just letting things naturally happen kind of
Yeah.
things flowed better.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things was sales. I had a frustrating go there for the last few weeks where things were just falling through and things were not working the way I wanted, and it was just, and like I think I had like 8 or 9 things that just collapsed or fell through or just didn't go through when I was expecting them to, and we were like right there, but something happened and it just didn't happen, right? So I was getting frustrated, so I kept trying to force it, trying to help. Okay, what else? And then I finally just let go and like, okay, if it's not meant to be, like, where can we focus and still work hard on the things that I can control.
Yeah.
And I'll work hard to get those things done. And if it doesn't happen, I'll let it go.
Yep.
Right. And that was kind of my switch, my mindset switch.
Yeah.
And as soon as I did that, it was I've had a really productive week. I even went and somebody, or not convinced, but had talked somebody out of selling their land that they were going to sell because I'm like, well, is this really a smart decision, right? And
Is this the best thing for them?
and it was. And it was like, it was about what they needed, their needs.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a hard one because like I feel like, oh, I really want the sale. I really could use it. But at the same time, it wasn't. From what I could see, from what they're telling me, there's a better decision to make here.
Yeah.
And honestly, there is, right? And so I told them that. And they're so thankful. And they're like, oh, we didn't think about that. We didn't. Right. And so I'm like, don't make a decision today. Think about it for a few days and let's talk again. If you really want to sell, I'll take it, right? But at the same time, you got to make the right decision for you, right?
Well, like Gary Vee has this thing, and it sounds silly, but I love it. He says, doing the right thing is always the right thing.
Yeah.
Right? And it's the truth. Doing the right thing is always the right thing.
Yeah.
And short term, you could have pushed for the commission and it would have been cool and whatever, but it wouldn't have been the right thing. And because it wouldn't have been the right thing, it wouldn't have been good for you, and it wouldn't have been good for them, even if there was a short-term hit for you.
Yeah.
You know? So that's really cool.
How about you now? That was my short version.
Yeah, so my short version, we kind of unpacked before we started recording. I mean, we tried to record, just didn't work. But this has been a very hard week for me. All of the emotions, anger, frustration, sadness, a whole bunch of things, both personally and professionally, have gone on this week. So it has been a long week, And truth be told, I actually thought about texting you Wednesday and just being like, you know what, screw it, man. We're gonna do it like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, something. I just don't have it in me. But then I thought about it a little bit. I was like, no, I look forward to doing podcasts with you on these Fridays. We're not canceling. We're gonna go, and I'm gonna take the time I need, which is usually my drive from my house to your house, to just get my head in the game and get ready for it. And so when we were talking about topics for this evening, because of my week, I really had like no brain power to think through. And you would come up with, being able to push through, being able to persevere, and then your attitude. And I was like, oh, great, we could talk about my crappy attitude on this podcast because of the hard week I've had. Admittedly, I've let it affect my attitude towards things at work and such. And obviously it kind of bleeds over here and there. But yeah, it's one of those things they always say, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it, right? And I've been a little reactionary this week, and not in a good way. And so when you suggested this topic of pushing through and persevering and the attitude towards things, I was like, oh, that's hitting close to home this week. So I guess, yeah, my week was not great, but the topic is fantastic. And so when you threw that out there, God puts things in our way for a reason.
Yeah.
And so what was sort of your thought process about this week's topic?
Well, confession, it's kind of funny. I was giving you 3 different topics, and then you said yes.
Excellent.
So I was like, okay, we'll tie it in. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Pushing through perseverance. That attitude, I was like, that was something totally separate.
So with the storm that I've been going through this week, when you shot those over, I didn't read them as 3 separate topics. In my head, I was thinking pushing through and perseverance, like you said, go together.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking your attitude towards whatever's going on, because you can push through and you can persevere on a lot of things.
Right.
But how's your attitude towards it?
Yeah.
Because I can absolutely say, not now, because now, like, I recognize my attitude this week was junk, and like I'm able to fix that on my drive home, and I'm able to work through some of that. Talking to my wife helps, talking to friends help, that sort of thing.
Right.
But I can say in the past, some of the things that I've gone through, I pushed through, I've persevered, but my attitude has been atrocious.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so that's where my brain went when you sent these. So I love that you're like, oh, here's 3 topics, pick one. And I was just like, yes.
that was the best. I was like, oh, okay, now I guess we'll just jump into it. Right?
But I think if you're listening to this, man, and you kind of pause for a minute and think about that, you've pushed through a lot in life. You've gotten here. You've gotten to today whenever you're listening to this.
Yeah.
You've made it through the hardest times in your life because you made it here. You've persevered. You've pushed through. You've made it. How's your attitude, though?
That's the biggest thing, right? Like I said, I felt like I was spiraling there for a while, and I was going down, and I'm just like, man, this just is not. I was so frustrated. I was trying to not take it out on anybody. Just going to the gym in the morning, just hitting it hard, and just like
trying to get it out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And just really pushing there, and not take it out. But I mean, I'm kind of one that I wear my heart on my sleeve, right? And so I, as much as I try, it's still coming out and stuff. Really recognize, man, I'm so tired of doing this, and I'm just burning out in some senses. I need to just stop, right? Because whatever I'm doing isn't working. So pushing harder is not going to help me, right? So learning to be like recognizing that this is my attitude is starting to suck because I'm pushing, I'm persevering, but also to realize at some point I need to stop doing what I'm doing because my attitude is starting to really tank because I'm trying to push through this, right? And take a step back and reevaluate what I'm doing. Is this good? Is this the right choice? Is this the right move for me, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as I did that, like this week turned completely, right?
And how did you feel?
Well, I felt that there's a switch, and I could just feel like there's something that just...
Because things were flowing.
Right, and even I entered into a difficult situation, we'll say, like, it was very it was a conflict, right? And
Yeah.
and between in the middle of a sale, and I'm trying to navigate how do I deal with these people in this conflict, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing I did is because I took a step back, because I wasn't trying to force it,
Yep.
and I realized like, okay, this is how we have to deal with it.
Yep.
But I was able to think through and kind of distance myself a little bit, knowing that on one hand, somebody's not going to be happy,
Yep.
and that's part of negotiations, right?
Yep.
Is and for my side is like we weren't willing to give anymore, and the other side like, look, this is where we're at, right? And so
Yep.
we were able to get what we wanted ultimately on one hand, and yet knowing full well that it's going to cost on my side a little bit down the road, and they knew that, they knew what we were getting into, and that's just what it is, right? But knowing that, okay, we get gain now, we lose a little bit later, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's fine. That's part of
It
life.
came out as a win-win, though.
It did, yeah,
even though
right.
one party
Everybody's gonna
wasn't
be happy, and we're gonna look back on this in like 6 months' time, 3 months' time, and be like, wow, I can't believe we actually got what we got,
Yep.
right? Like, because I think we got really good value for what we had for selling, right? And I think the people who bought, they're going to be very happy with what they bought, right? They're
Yeah.
going to look back and say, hey, look, we got really good value for what we bought. So it will be a win-win, right?
Yeah.
So
100%. I love your stories. It's just, yeah, it's been a week. But
Yeah.
something you said made me think about this here. So when we're talking about pushing through, you know, especially as men, guys, pushing through to us is like grit and get it done,
yeah,
right? But I think something you said of, you took a step back, you reflected, you did some things differently, and you felt that switch. I think pushing through doesn't always mean work harder,
right.
push harder. I think pushing through means exactly what you said is let's pause for a moment, evaluate, and move accordingly, right? Like you need to. Jocko Willing talks about this in Extreme Ownership, where he says, you need to detach, take a look around, and be able to evaluate, kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
And I think that's really good. You're still gonna push through, but instead of pushing through the middle, maybe you go around the other side because you see a different path.
yeah, yeah. I think even looking at things, just take that step back and like, this is crazy what I'm doing. This isn't working. This isn't making sense. So what what could I do differently, right?
Yeah.
Where we're often told that you just drive, you hammer down the middle, you hammer down the middle, right?
Yeah.
And think of like a football running back, always running down the middle, running down the middle. Also, he runs down the side, and also, bam, he can get 10 yards instead of 2, right? Because they know that he's going to be running down.
If you keep running down the middle, you're gonna get sacked because the guys know where you're coming.
Yeah, so you took a switch and, okay, step back, look, okay, we can still run it. We can still do the motion, but
Yeah.
we're going to go a different way. And suddenly it opens it up and you're free to just, like,
Yeah.
I'm not feeling that pressure anymore all the
So-
time, right?
So to that end, one of my favorite quotes is by Einstein. I've said this on here
Yeah.
before. I said this to you before, but insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
Yeah,
That's Einstein's definition of insanity. And I love that quote because one of the things that's kind of reared its ugly head in my life as I've become more self-aware is I want a certain outcome. I have certain goals, whatever. And I've been trying to get them for 6 months, a year, maybe longer. And it's not working.
yeah,
Well, when I'm just pushing through like grit and trying to make it, force it, it doesn't work. But the times where it does work is when I'm pushing through, but I've taken a step back. And I've seen the definition of insanity in my own life in that situation, almost like an out-of-body experience. I'm looking down going, dude, you keep trying to do the same thing and hope for a different outcome.
yeah,
It doesn't work. So where do you need to pause in your life, take that step back and go, hey man, we've been doing the same thing. It's not working.
it's not working. Yeah, I think there's a lot of value there. But I think there's also times where we need to just buckle down and hammer through, right? Like it's about but reevaluating and seeing And sometimes nope, we're so close, like that what is it, 3 meters from gold, or 3 feet
3 feet from gold.
right? Where you're
Yes.
so close, you just have to hit that, just keep going, you're almost there.
Yeah.
But it's also knowing the difference is when are you 3 feet from gold, or when are you.
The number one question I have asked people in the past is, how do you know when you're 3 feet from gold versus, oh dude, you like, doesn't matter how far you dig,
It's the wrong path.
it's the wrong path. And honestly, no one's giving me a good answer. But also, I'm looking for, I'm looking for those magic beans. Like, how do you know, how do you know you're on the right path? Well, you don't unless you persevere and push through, right? And so sometimes you're shoveling some rock for a very long time before you finally go, all right, I wasn't 3 feet from gold on that one.
Yeah. So this kind of like this whole topic actually kind of ties in, and one of the things I'm learning is about my goals for the year, right?
Okay.
Yeah, right. And so one of the things is I want to be, obviously my goal is to be one of the top producing agents, right?
Right.
And so what does that look like, right? And in my head, I'm thinking top producing agents. Well, I want to just get all these sales and master and be like top, right?
Yep.
But that's not how they get there, right? And this is what I'm learning is like, this is my goal.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, on my path to doing this, well, God's showing me here. You want to know how they do it?
Yeah.
Here, how do you get through this obstacle? How do you do this, right? Wow, okay, well, I'm downward spiraling and I'm out of control. Also, like, stop, reset, take a look. Okay, let's go this way, right? And also, like, oh, well, how do the top producing agents do it? They stop, they just know how to do it faster, right?
But I also think, and I'm cutting you off on purpose here. Again, we might rename this podcast to Interrupting Jeremy. But I also firmly believe that if you ask God for, patience, he's going to put you in positions where you're going to be impatient.
Right.
Because he's giving you the opportunity.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if you're saying to God, hey, I want to be the top producer, I want growth, all these things, well, what do you think is going to happen? He's going to put you in hard spots to be like, all right, man,
Here you go.
what you got?
What are you going to do in this situation, right?
That's right.
Top producers will know how to do this, right? And so when you kind of go to that, you're like, okay. So coming out of it, it's like, oh, well, I learned. So I learned this lesson.
Yeah.
That's going to be how I'm going to get there to the next level.
Yeah.
Once I get this, I think top producers, they just recognize and get there faster, right? Once okay, this is what's happening, you stop, reduce.
It's all self-awareness.
Yeah.
And having good people in your life.
Yes.
Because I think that two things need to happen. You need to be self-aware enough. You need to be so self-aware that instead of it taking years for you to be like, oh, dude, I'm in the wrong direction, it's a day, a week. Like, it's very quick. And then I also think that having good, seasoned mentors in your life, age has nothing to do with this, just good men in your life that have gone where you want to go, to be like, hey, Jeremy, go left.
Yeah.
Because they went right, figured out it didn't work.
Right.
So they're able to guide you.
But I think that's where you touched on in mentors is quality, right?
Yeah.
Not just having a mentor, but somebody who's quality, right? Because I've listened to other people,
Yep.
and I was like, I don't like what they're saying. It
Yep.
just didn't sit with me, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not listening to them. Then I've had other people where it's like, I didn't like what they're saying, but I agree that I need to, but it's a hard truth I have to hear.
Yeah.
Right? It's difference, right? And there's times where I didn't like what they're saying, so I'm not going to listen to them.
Also, owning, like, oh, I don't like what they're saying, but it's because it's for me.
Yeah.
Right? Versus, I don't like what they're saying because it doesn't sit right. Yeah. Right? Like, there's to me, there's a fine line. Because just because I don't like what you're saying to me doesn't mean it's not for me.
Yeah. But there's also that going back to knowing your why, right? Because it doesn't line up with who I am, right?
Yeah.
Your reason, your thing, like sales is an interesting thing where you can either be, there's a lot of people who are in it just to make a buck. Nothing wrong with that. You're trying to make money. But how, like we all are, like obviously, right? But the way you go about it, right? I'm more about, I'm going to give more value.
relationship.
And it's gonna come at a cost at some point where
Yep.
I'm not gonna get everything back that I'm gonna
Yep.
give,
100%.
and I'm okay with that,
Yep.
right? Where other people look at it, well, why would you tell your clients that you got to get before you give them that you get this first, right? And it's like, well, no, I'm going to give them this, knowing that they're going to get that.
Yeah.
And like today, like or this week rather, where I went said, look, are you sure you want to sell because A, B, C, and D?
Yeah.
Like, have you thought about this, right? And
it costs you in the moment, but it builds you for the future.
but
Personally,
yeah, right,
that's what I believe.
100%, right? And they're like, and I'm like, you know what, I just don't want you guys to make a mistake and look back on this, and right, and they're like, you have no idea how much we appreciate that. Like we talked to other people, and they were like, oh yeah, do it here. I'll listen for this. I'll do this, right? And I was the only one that said, well, hold on, are you guys really sure you want to do this, right? I'll gladly do it, but this. And they're like, why would you do that?
I'll
like,
take your money.
Right.
But,
and they're like, why would you do that? Because you know it's cost. I'm like, because, you know what? It's more important that I give value than I get money, right? Like,
but
I think that it'll come back, right? So I'm not worried about that because I think that you add enough value that it will come back.
But I think that this is one of those things I just wrote down, give value, because for me, when I hear you talk about that, it resonates not just from a sales perspective or a business perspective, but from a life perspective.
100%.
Like being a man of value and giving value to your people in your life, to your clients, to your friends, to your colleagues, all these people in your life, giving value is always the right thing to do, but you have to be a man of value first.
Yeah.
And so if you're living a crappy life in any area, clean that up.
Yeah.
Be a man of value first, then you can be of value to others. And obviously it's a path, so you can, you're going to work on yourself and bring value to others kind of simultaneously.
Yeah.
But you have to be on the path.
Absolutely.
Right? And so 100% I believe that value is coming back to you, whether it's tomorrow or 10 years from now. Like, again, like Gary Vee says, doing the right thing is always the right thing. Yeah. And that was the right thing in the moment. And so maybe there's an outcome we don't see yet. Maybe the outcome's as simple as the next time they're talking to another couple that's looking to sell their house, they're going, dude, you call this Jeremy guy because he helped us not sell our property? Oh, wait, what do you mean? Look, we had a great conversation with him.
Well, I did help to buy something else, which is why I came back, right?
Right.
But it's,
But it's one of those things where it's like, no, Jeremy did the right thing by us. That's why you should work with him.
Yeah.
He wasn't just trying to take our dollar kind of thing. And I 100% agree with you. I think it's one of those things where I sell the same way when I do. Life would be easier if it was just all about me and the dollar. And if I had, no conscience, and I could just like list your home, I'll take your money, no problem. Like life would be easier. But because like you, I want to give value. I want to make sure you're taken care of, because I do care. I care.
Absolutely.
Right. And to me, sales has always been for me a win-win.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
And so to me, the guys that are just out for the buck and don't really care about the person that they're selling to, that's not a win-win.
Yeah.
It's a win-lose. Right. And eventually they get theirs, in my opinion. But that's a different topic for a different day.
100%.
But I do think that if you're going to push through, you have to give value. Like when you're pushing through and you're just being a terrible human being. Again, in any area, maybe you're an amazing human, like you're super nice, super kind, but other areas of your life, you're kind of a loser. You're not living up to your potential.
Yeah.
Then you're not going to push through well because you're not giving value.
Yeah.
You're not being a man of value.
Right. And even speak to that, now let's go back to that's what pushing through and perseverance. Well, what's your attitude, right? If your attitude is, I'm worried about me.
Yeah.
Well, you're not giving it. Like, you're not. How's that? What's the outcome going to be, right? Then right away, while you're pushing through it, you're worried about just yourself.
Yeah.
That's where is that going to go, right? Whereas your attitude is, you know what? This sucks. I really need this sale. I really need this bad. But I know it's not good for them. And so I'm going to go and I'm going to give value, and I'm going to tell them, you know what? I'm going to put myself aside. This is for you, right? And you add that value and you're just giving, right? And you're like, Yeah, I know it. I know this is gonna happen, and I know whatever, right? And this is gonna cost, but I'm gonna give this to you anyway, right?
Yeah.
And believe that something else will come along, something
I,
else will happen.
I just thought about this idea of being selflessly selfish.
Right,
So you're giving value, but it's also selfish in that you know it's going to come back to you because you're doing the right thing.
right,
And again, it might not be the same day, it might not be the next day or the next week. Like, it might take time, and you might struggle because you didn't need that sale.
yeah,
But because you gave value and you did the right thing, it's going to come back to you.
yeah.
Right? I firmly believe that.
I do too. I'm a very big believer in, and if you're worried about yourself in the moment, that's a very dangerous place to be. Whereas if you can just give,
Yeah.
and even when it costs, and it sucks sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But Tony Robbins often says the secret to living is giving, right? And just
100%.
giving of yourself.
Well, you have kids.
Yeah.
How much fun is it to give them gifts
Oh yeah.
and see the joy out of them? Like, to me, I love giving gifts way more than I
Oh,
like
yeah.
receiving gifts. And I like receiving gifts.
Right. Right.
Right? But the joy on my kid's face, or giving someone something special,
Yeah.
that to me is so much more fun than receiving.
Yeah.
And so if you kind of take that view of it through the rest of your life in business and all these things, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, you could even say that the gym isn't for you because you're creating a amount of value physically, nutritionally, all these things.
Right.
And you're giving that amount of value to your people, to your family.
Right.
And again, selflessly selfish, because when you're taking care of you and becoming a man of value daily, it's really helping them.
It changes a lot more when your attitude is of value, right? Like
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, when your attitude of value.
and so that could look in many different ways what that looks like, right? So how are you with your kids? How are you with your partner? How are you with your business? How are you with your 9 to 5? How are you when you go play beer league baseball or hockey? How are you when you show up to life? How are you with your friends?
Yeah.
When you show up, it's just, are you that guy that shows up and is there and whatnot, or are you that guy that people want to see, right?
Yeah. I think my favorite example of this, as we're talking through it, is of what you were just saying, is if you ever watch a 90s sitcom, 99% of the dads on these 90s sitcoms, what do?
Losers.
They come, every single one of them. They come home, they crack a beer, they sit on their couch, Ed Bundy was, put his hands down his pants and crack a beer kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the wife and kids would walk all over. Right? And it's not just Ed Bundy, it's all of the dads on the 90s sitcoms. Yeah. That was kind of the thing. Al Bundy.
Al Bundy is somebody else.
Sorry, Al Bundy. Yeah, married with children. Yeah. I couldn't think of the.
I think Ted Bundy did a few other things.
A few other things. Yeah. For all you ladies out there that listen to the true crime. But yeah, like that's what I think about. Like those aren't present dads. Those aren't present men.
Yeah.
They're not present for their wife and kids. That's not a man of value.
Yeah. A
man of value shows up, and maybe now it's not the beer drinking, because that's kind of gone by the wayside, in the upcoming generations. But now it's this thing here, and I just picked up my phone for those just listening. But am I on my phone while my kids are talking to me? You know, or is it down and I'm playing with them in present? And I can say honestly, I oscillate between the two. I go back and forth.
Right.
Where I'm not doing that great. I am on my phone, and then I also am becoming more aware of that. So I do find myself now more and more putting my phone off to the side, away, kind of down, off, whatever, so that I can play tag with my kids, so that I can play card games with my kids, all these things.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, kids don't need hours and hours and hours of attention when it's quality.
Right.
Not to say I don't want to spend tons of time with my kids, because I do. I love them to death. But if you just play a few rounds of a card game with them, and then they go off and play with their friends or do something else, like, they're totally good and love you and feel connected. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Or are you the dad that comes home and plays on their phone, or cracks a beer, or plays Xbox, or whatever the thing is? Oh, I spent 6 hours with my kids. Did you really?
Yeah,
Did you really? Or were you playing Call of Duty?
big difference, right?
Right? Like, just because you were in the room doesn't mean you were with your kids.
Yeah. The other aspect I think we haven't really touched on much is, are you giving value spiritually to whatever you're involved in? Like, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to church, are you giving value there, right? Like, and I'm guilty of this. I show up Sunday morning, I'll go to church, and I'll say
You're,
hi to a few people,
you're
shake a
just a
few hands.
meat sack in the seat.
Yeah, well, no, I like when I'm there though. Like, it's like
Oh, you're on. I
like,
got you. I
like
got you.
but I'm not involved. Like I go to church every Sunday, but I'm not involved in my church, right? I don't
I got
go
you.
don't give back. Like
I got
I'm there, I'm invested while I'm there,
Yeah.
and I'll shake a few hands, but I'm not there to meet other people, right?
Yeah.
I haven't been. I try. How do I say this? I try not to mix my church, my beliefs,
Yeah.
too much with my business, right? It's like I'm not at church to do business. I'm at
Like
church
that, yeah.
to be.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Be, my purpose of going to church is to meet God,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
You're
God's
not
everywhere, but like my
you're not
focus is there. Yeah,
you're not going to church to go, "Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a realtor."
yeah. Let's do some business.
Yeah.
I'm going to church because that's where my focus there is God. If somebody wants to talk business, hey, here's my card. Hey, here's my number. Let's talk.
Sunday morning's not
Yeah.
the deal.
I got time this week. When
Yeah.
do you want to meet? Right? Like I'm good with that, but like that's not my purpose there.
Do you
Right?
know where it shows up for me recently anyways is how am I leading my family
Right.
spiritually?
Right.
Am I showing up spiritually for my family? And that for me that's my relationship with God, but also am I praying with my wife?
Right.
Am I praying with my kids? Am I showing my kids physically, by my actions and my words and things that I love the Lord, that I have a relationship with the Lord,
Right.
and I can honestly say that I've thought about it this last month, for example, just been like, dang, I need to do a better job.
Right.
I need to pick up my socks. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time thinking about that.
Yeah.
How I show up with God and for my family
Yep.
spiritually. And it's definitely an area that's like on my heart.
It's a hard. It's a difficult area. It seems maybe it shouldn't be, but it sure is. Like where you're like showing up with your kids and your spouse or whatever and
Yep.
praying and doing that. It seems like, well, it shouldn't be that hard. Like we could.
But it's
But
one of the hardest things in the world for
it
some
really
silly
is.
reason.
It really is.
And I think it's one of those like it's one of those things I think that is made hard mentally
Yeah.
because there are forces that don't want us to be spiritually tight with our family,
Yeah.
don't want to have us spiritually lead our family. Different podcast perhaps, but I think it's one of those things we need to work on is build that spiritual inside, inside our home, be that
Yeah.
spiritual leader, and it's a hard one.
It is.
It's a hard one. Also, one of the biggest things I think that's a barrier to that, at least for me, is busyness.
Right.
Right? As silly as it sounds, as simple as it sounds, it's like we were talking before we figured out how the heck to record this thing this week, that like by the time I get all my things done for the day and I'm home and whatever because of my commute, like by the time my last son goes to bed, it's 9 o'clock. Like
Yeah.
there's not a lot of time for me to get things done the way I would like. And that's an excuse. Guys, you can roast me in the comments. I know it's an excuse. And I just need to figure it out. But it does make it difficult when I want to do Bible reading with the boys and I want to pray with Lita and I want to all these things. By the time we get time to do that, it's like the day is smoked.
Well, you know what? I'm going to give you an analogy that I've often used is take it for what it is.
Yeah.
A crackhead will always find ways to get crack.
100%.
If you prioritize it long enough
100%.
or hard enough, you will always find a way, right?
If it matters.
If it matters
Yeah.
deep enough, you
Yeah.
will figure it out, right? And
If it really
that
matters,
might be a
you figure
really
it out.
weird analogy,
It's
but
true,
it's
though.
the truth, right?
It's
like,
true.
is somebody who has nothing, they'll find a way to do that. Like when I smoked, I always found a way to find cigarettes, right? Like when I did, if I wanted something bad enough, I will always find a way to do it. So
100%.
So maybe the problem isn't that, oh, I don't know how. It's maybe we just don't want it bad enough, because if we do, we will figure it out.
Do you want it bad enough? Do you want it bad enough? Do you? Oh yeah.
So
How bad do you want it?
I'll just show you like on my phone. It's something that keeps me going.
Yeah.
Is how bad do you want it? It serves as a reminder that I've had there now for a while. Is it keeps me, and you can see I did Duolingo there.
I know. I like it.
I went
Still,
like 33 days.
so the interesting thing about that though is, like you're kind of like stabbing at me a little bit, pins and needles,
I did
because
it. It's
because
accountability to me.
yeah. Because I've been thinking about this where like I'm working on something that I really want badly, and I'm like ebbing and flowing through it where I'm like, I'll do it later.
Yeah.
I'll do it. I'll do it later. I'll do it. Right? And so it's this weird thing where I'm like up and down and up and down. But then the other day I had this thought driving home, and I was like, if I really want to change my life, I just need to get her done. I need to push through. I need to persevere and actually put in the work. And this thing I'm talking about is one of those things where I do just need to push through, hammer down,
Right.
and fight through the middle kind of thing. And I know it, but I hadn't thought about it. And that thought came to my mind as I was driving home one night this week, and I was like, dang it, you're right. Like, to myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this is one of those things where if I don't do it, I'm going to leave 2024 different, but not as different as I could.
Right.
And that's one of my things this year is I refuse to leave 2024 the same way I went in.
Yep.
In every area of my life, I must move that needle forward in every area before I leave 2024.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things where all of a sudden in my brain, I'm like, well, I just have to do it. Like, I have to
do this.
I have to do it. Like, I don't know what the answer is yet. I just have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I have to fight through and persevere.
That's one of the biggest things is okay. So if you know what, having goals set, right? If you know what your goals are,
Yep.
What's gonna stop you from your goals?
100%. And it's funny. I was having coffee with a friend of mine earlier in the week, one evening, and we were talking about this in a business context, but it's a good for life too. Is your goal is here, right? You want to get here. You're currently here, so what are the steps? Reverse engineering, right?
Yeah.
And I just need to do that again. I need to do it again and figure it back out.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm right there to like figuring it out. I just have to do the figure part.
Yeah.
And then move forward.
Yeah. That's the thing where, and just the challenge, I guess, of that is don't get stuck in figuring it out, because we can often get stuck in the analysis of it. Oh, like, oh, I need to do this.
Getting stuck in the figuring.
Yeah. It's such a easy place to get stuck in, but to push through that, that's one of those things where it's like, okay, you know what, enough of this. I need to just do it.
And we've talked about this before,
Yeah.
maybe not on the podcast, I don't think, but this idea of messy action.
Yeah.
And maybe we have, but this idea of messy action, like for me, again, I don't know the how, but I just need to get moving.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, and I'll trip and fall and screw up along the way.
Yep.
But I need to get moving, and so that's something I'm mentally working through. Yeah. Lots of thoughts going on in my head right now.
Yeah. Well, in this week, so I had, I'm also on town council.
Yeah.
And I had a media training thing this week, right?
Yeah.
And so we sat through this whole seminar, and then at the end of it, we had to go in front of a camera and a mic, and you had to do a mock interview, right? And it's about town council, and so they're also throwing curveball questions. You get a little bit of a script, you got to read through it, and then they're asking you questions.
Jeremy, is it okay if I paint my house hot pink?
Yeah, well, and so they're doing this thing, right? And all of a sudden, you're this scrum, and so I was like, and then there's a bunch of people, and people are getting involved and asking more questions.
And we're getting heated probably a little bit.
Well, it's not too bad, right? Well, some people got a lot more, right? But I went in there and I did that. What I did realize is afterwards there's a group of, we're about 20, 25 people.
Yeah.
They played in front of everybody. They played everybody's, and they critiqued everybody's, right?
Yeah.
And I was like,
Oh dang.
oh dang, right? Like, how did I do, right? And so
How'd you do?
the comment they got is his the way I did it was so authentic.
Yeah.
It was just I was just conversational. I said what I needed to say,
Yep.
and I had good rapport right away. That they just kept asking questions, and I'd answer them
Yep.
like enough.
But for anybody that knows you,
Yeah,
that's just par for the course.
right. But I was who I am
Yeah.
now. I just that's who I was, right? And
Yeah.
I kept that. I had a conversation with them.
Yeah.
I answered their questions, and they're like the guy who was doing it. He's a professional. He has like 30 years in the
Like a
business.
speaker kind of thing.
Like, well, he was like he did hosted radio shows and
Okay.
such, and this is his training. He trains people for this,
Okay.
right? And he's like, I had a conversation with you,
Yeah.
and everybody else did too. And he's like, I felt like we could just keep talking, right? I like
Which is perfect.
we felt like you were very honest with us.
Yeah.
You never hid anything. You answered a question, but then you kind of softened it, like
Yeah, yeah.
because they knew
Jeremy,
the
and you're
spirit,
just
right?
like, whoa, slow it down.
Yeah, right. And they just like it was really good
Like, what was the point of the exercise? To see how good of a speaker you were?
to see how you handle like emergency situations. So this is
Oh,
happens
got
like
you.
with town council and the emergency situations. A disaster happens.
Got
How
you.
do you react to this, right?
Got you.
And
Like
you need to be a
How do you deal with stress?
how do you deal with the stress of it, right?
Understood.
And one thing I watched is from talking with a lot of these people and getting
Yeah.
to know some of them, is when they got in front of the camera, they changed who they were, right? They became
Mm.
very political. They became very straight. They became like,
My name is Brendan, and I approve this message.
right. Like it was one of those things where they shifted, right? And
Yeah.
and some people got like defensive immediately over, and this is an exercise, and you're like, oh, that wouldn't go well, right?
Yeah.
And you're just like, and you're kind of like, okay, but it's when you then there's a number of people that were just like, well, this is the answer. They were factual. They were whatever, right? But and some of them were like spot on. Like that's what you expect from a politician. That's what you
Yeah.
expect, right? Is that they nailed it well, right? And so it was a unique exercise in when you get thrown into a place where it's uncomfortable. Are you going to change who you are? Are you going to stay who you are? Are you going to be able to be that person? What's your attitude going to be like?
What a great juxtaposition to real life. Like, when you're put in a hard position, who are you?
who are you? Yeah.
Right?
And that was a mock situation. So you can say, oh, it's just nothing. But at the same time, it was a situation where it's not comfortable because, like, when you, like,
You have
thankfully, I
people-
do stuff like a little bit of video stuff, so
Yeah.
I'm not too scared of the camera. But when you have questions coming in, you don't know what they're going to be.
Yep.
And you know that the guy is purposely going to throw you a few
Trip you up.
questions
Yeah.
to trip you up. And yet, he did. And he's like, okay, well, that was a good answer, right?
Yeah.
And he's just like, and you can see you kind of caught him thinking of other questions, and so he comes with another question.
Yeah.
And you get I got a number of odd curveball questions that other people weren't getting because it's like, okay, well, let's try this.
Yeah.
Let's try this.
Because
It was like, it
he
was just
was
a good,
trying to trip you up.
excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was just a good exercise to like, and when I came out of there with, even still, the one thing that he said was he felt authentic. It was a conversation.
Yeah.
I connected with him immediately.
Which for you is a huge win, because that's, like, in all your interactions, that's what you personally are looking for.
That's who I want to be. I don't
Yeah.
want to be somebody who you're going to see on camera, and then you're going to see me in the street, and you're going to be like, well, that's not who I thought it was, right? Now we all have our days, but like
Yeah.
overall, I want to be the authentic guy that you're going to see here. You're going to see me
100%.
there. You're going to see this is just who I am, right? I don't need to be a
Yeah,
shapeshifter.
if you see this on video or you listen to on the podcast, if you meet Jeremy in person, he's the exact same guy.
Yeah.
Exact same guy. And that's one of the reasons we're friends, I think, is because we're both the same guy.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I am who I am, you get who I get. Now the like the whole Instagram thing, trying to be open on Instagram, I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah.
Again, different conversation for a different podcast maybe, but I like people that are simply themselves and they're not changing for who they're in front of.
Yeah.
Now, granted, there's a difference between changing who you are and knowing what room you're in.
Right. I'll have different conversations with different people. Like
Yeah.
I have certain guys
Like
where
your language changes
right,
because you're in a certain room with certain people.
totally.
And it's not you changing who you are, it's just understanding what level you're playing at. It's the same thing. I'm reading a book right now and they were talking about clothes, right? Like how you dress.
Yeah.
And everyone immediately is like, oh, you got to dress to impress, you got to dress for the job you want, all these things. And the point they were making was dress authentically you, but also know that there are places where showing up looking homeless is not your best self,
Yes.
right? And so, yeah, authentic to you may not be a shirt and tie. Doesn't mean you can't dress to the nines authentically and show up in that room properly.
Yeah.
Right? Because first impressions do matter. Not perspective, perception. Perception does matter.
Yeah.
And so these are things you have to think through. And I think how you talk, it's kind of like how you dress.
Yes.
Right? You can still be authentically you, but there are some rooms you're in.
Yeah.
How you address people needs to change.
Yeah. And even there, like showing up, like, are you going to be, who is showing up? Are you going to be, like you said, are you going to be the homeless guy that's going to be trying to meet, to talk to connect with? Or are you going to be the guy who's dressed to the nines, who's like, or are you going to just be the guy who dresses professionally, acts professionally, but still can communicate, still can be authentic, still can be like, are you still going to be yourself, right? Like, and whether you're dressed to the nines or whether you're dressed homeless, like, which one are you still? Can you still be you, right? Like the time where you're running out in sweats to go to the gym or to go to the store, you're just like, you know what? It's like 8:30. I had to run to the store. I'm just gonna wear sweats and just that's what I'm ready to go.
And Jeremy is still Jeremy, and Jeremy can have any conversation.
Yeah.
But Jeremy is also smart enough to know he's not going to show up in sweats to do a deal.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, both with dress and how you talk. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is like the tonality and the word choices of the sweatpants.
Yeah.
Quote unquote.
Yeah.
Like, you can be that guy, but you also recognize when you're over here in this room doing deals or doing your town council stuff.
Yeah.
Sweatpant Jeremy should probably stay at home.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're not being authentically you. It just means you understand what room you're in.
Right. Absolutely.
And so, and I think that goes back to attitude a little bit, is if you're being a man of value, being a man of value means you understand what rooms you're in.
Yeah.
You understand who you're with and what games are being played. And when I say games, I don't mean like bad things. I just mean when you're at work, there's a certain deportment you need to have. There's a certain look and feel for that job. And when you're talking to the boss, it's not talking to your buddies, right?
Right.
And that's the same thing in every area of life. You're not just talking to the buddies. Sometimes you're talking to people that deserve a little bit better dress,
Yeah.
a little bit better conversation,
Right.
a little bit better language, and those things matter. So if you're being a man of value that wants to persevere and push through, you need to have a good attitude and you need to understand what room you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. And even there is, when you're being a man of value, you're also going to be one that you're not going to give up. You're going to, that's where we're going to cycle back right into the perseverance, right?
Move forward always.
Pushing through, and you're going to go to the next level no matter what, because that's who you're going to be, right? So you're going to always want to be better. You're always going to want to give that extra.
And I think, because we're almost on time here, or out of time, but I think that's one of those things where, I always say move forward always.
Yeah.
Right? But sometimes to move forward, like we were talking about earlier, you need to take a step back.
Yeah.
So I encourage you guys, take a step back, get self-aware, realize where you are, what's the problem going on in your head. Like Jeremy was talking about, he felt spirally, like he was spiraling in a bad direction. He took a step back, course corrected. That's move forward always, right? Because again, doing the same things over and over and expecting a different result, in my opinion, just gets you further down the rabbit hole of where you don't want to be. And so that to me is the biggest, most important thing right now. Just take a step back, realize where you're at, reevaluate, and make a plan to move forward.
Make a plan, yeah.
Because making a plan, plans never go according to plan. But if you make a plan, you at least have a direction, a heading.
Yes.
Once you have a heading, a North Star, you can move in that direction. And that's why you need to set goals, know your why, all the other things that we preach on this podcast, being able to move forward. Because once you have that heading, you can reverse engineer and figure out how to move forward.
100%. Once you have a direction, at least you're moving.
Yeah.
And once again, taking a step back doesn't mean you stop showing up. You're still showing up.
That's
you're still
right.
working.
That's
you're still
right.
doing the things. Maybe it's just a different approach in how you do it, right? And what that looks like. Maybe it's like, okay, instead of working till 8 o'clock, I'm going to work till 5, and I'm going to take those 3 hours. I'm going to rest. And I'm going to reset, right? And I think there's value in resting. I'm very much about pushing, but I think there's also that value of realizing, okay, I'm going to either burn myself out, or this just isn't working anymore, and I got to reset, right? So it's that rest is there to help you refocus.
Yeah.
It's not there to be lazy.
Yeah.
Right? Like sometimes that rest is being lazy and actually resting.
But it's a moment. It's not a forever.
It's not a lifestyle, right?
That's right.
Right. So
right.
That's what it is, right? But you're still showing up from whatever time till whatever time, and you're working, still being diligent with that. But you're not quitting, right?
That's right. So if you want it bad enough, once you listen to this, you will take a step back, you will reevaluate, reassess, find that new heading, move forward, and work daily, diligently on being a man of value.
Yeah.
We love you. We're here for you. And if we can help you in the DMs, let us know.
Absolutely.
As always, see you next time.